I also fell down the stairs.
Well, besides a few little things.
Where are you going?
Walk down. Go to the gym. High street down fix connection. So
I don't sit too
it's kind of a bit
because I'm in a different time Okay, I'm sorry I was a tiny bit late. I am in a different time zone. I've just come back from a long holiday, so forgive me. But I have now got the time. And it is 6:31, I think. So we'll begin. Welcome to members of the public. I'm very pleased to see you. The bulk of this agenda, I just want to come to my opening remarks. The bulk of this agenda was drawn up before I went on holiday on February the 2nd. And I was pleased to see that it has actually been added to. There are additional items which I presume have come from members of this committee. And I think that in future anyway, I will ask members of the committee to suggest agenda items for the committee. I won't necessarily include them, but I will consider them. But I thought I would just say that there are 3 issues which I want to flag up for future discussion, 2 of which came up, I think, before I went away, and I did say to the individuals who were promoting these issues that I would raise them in my introduction. And the first is the question of the Thursday market. And this came up at the Tourism Information Working Group, and Anne-Marie Hugan was there. And I think we should, at this committee, obviously involving Anne-Marie, talk about how the Thursday market should be relaunched when the Guildhall forecourt is completed. So that is something that I do want to include on the agenda for next time. And I also think that the whole council needs to consider what or whether it wishes to celebrate, how or whether it wishes to celebrate the new forecourt once it's in place. Because I know it's controversial and some people will love it and other people already dislike it, but I do think that this is a large investment which has been made for the benefit of Sandwich by a number of funders, and that it would be appropriate to have some kind of event, and we should think about how that should happen, and the town council should consider it, and I think the town team should also be involved. I'll take comments when I finish them. So that's something else I wanted to flag up. The second point I wanted to flag up was that there seems to be confusion about what is happening to the old sets. I did follow this discussion on Facebook while I was away, and there seems to be some difficulty about who owns the old sets and who is going to get them. And I'm going to try and discover more about this in my capacity as chair, because I think it's important that if people feel they want some, they should perhaps be able to get them, but before we can do that, we have to find out who owns them currently. And the third issue, which has already been raised at this committee, when the bus stop stand B was temporary, it is now permanent, I see, and it clearly is in a very awkward, dangerous, in my view, position. And I did ask Artie, because I think the project manager was coming to Sandwich, and I asked you to show him.
It came earlier, a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, and did you show him the position?
We went to see it, yeah.
Yes, and did he have any response?
Not really, apart from the bus shelter is very expensive. It's about 25,000, and they're looking for cheaper options.
Right, so he only wanted to talk about the bus shelter, not about the position of the bus stop.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is to be installed by the end of May,
The permanent bus shelter. Because the bus stop is now permanent too. We talked about it before at this committee when it was still temporary, but it is now permanent. But he didn't have any view about the bus stop. Okay, well, we do have to go on keeping a watching eye on that, because I think there are a lot of people who are very concerned about it. So those were the three comments that I was going to make as part of my introduction. And Councillor Marie and Councillor Civica want to say something, and Councillor Wiles.
Yeah, just to comment on your remarks, Chair. Number one, the first one was, apologies, could you say the first one was, say it again, sorry?
The first one was about the market.
Yes, the market. So I'd like to suggest something in item 16.
Right.
Regarding the market and the market manager. So that would be that for that. Regarding the sets for the key, I've spoken to Councillor Friend. Councillor Friend said a large consultation was put in, and public were given the opportunity to register their interest in taking sets from the Guildhall. And the Sarah Horan, I believe, is the project officer. She was around the town before the sets were lifted up, and you can still apply. The public can still apply to take some sets through the DDC website if they wish to.
All right. Okay.
The other thing was regarding an event for the new square. I plan to put in an agenda item with the full council meeting next week. I'll do that tomorrow for the acting town clerk. I think that was it. Sorry. Regarding the bus stop, I believe me and Councillor Wiles have been in contact with David Parrish. I was CC'd in an email, and we'll see what we can do regarding that.
Yes, because I noticed.
Because it is dangerous.
It is dangerous, and I noticed that you suggested that the pavement should be straight. Is that right? An additional 5 metres.
Councillor Wiles is more involved in it than I was.
Yeah, so the current bus stand, if it's just extended in a straight line by about 4 metres, we did a measurement when the Mercury came a couple of weeks ago, and I sent a photograph to David Parrish saying that's all that needs to be done, and then 2 buses can sit there end to end. And indeed, Councillor Marie, as a experienced coach and bus driver, worked out the turning circle, and it would be long enough for 2 buses, and that would then obviate the need for this unsightly and dangerous bus stand outside the Guildhall.
As I said to Councillor Wiles when we were standing outside a couple of weeks ago, when I'm driving, my concern is my passengers. So when I shut the doors, I'm not concentrating on what's coming out of the junction when the bus stops. I'm concentrating on what's coming out behind me so I can take the turn. So if I'm looking in my rear view mirrors and my side mirrors to turn right to come out of the bus stop, I'm not concentrating on the junction, and anything can come out and there could be a major accident. But that's my opinion.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm very pleased to hear that you have been talking about it, and that maybe something can be done about it. Urgently, I think. Councillor Civica.
The only thing I'd like to talk about is the granite sets.
Yes.
I believe they belong to Sandwich Town Council because the courtyard is ours, okay? And I know this because of when we had to, if you want to book a stall in the centre of the courtyard, you have to ask Sandwich Town Council. If it's outside the courtyard, you ask KCC or whoever. But that's too late now, okay? I think we should put out a notice or something to say that only Councillor Friend knew anything about this. He didn't tell us. It's wrong. We're looking silly once again.
Mayor, can I speak?
Yes, I don't want to spend a
So,
huge amount of time.
when the project came into place, DDC has taken over the project. STC have no say in the project now. It's totally DDC, so the sets now belong to DDC, and that's why DDC have said right to the members of the public, and a big consultation was done before and is still ongoing. If people want the sets, they can apply for it online.
Okay. I'll take one more remark and then
Okay.
bring it to
I don't think anybody has had a reply from Sarah Horan because I don't think there are any granite sets left unless they're going to run to Waite's Garage and carry them back. This is not on. Why, if Councillor Friend and Councillor Chandler are our DDC representatives, why did they not tell us? So we could inform the public. There is no link on Sandwich Town Council website page.
Okay.
It's
I-
totally wrong.
Sorry,
I don't know quite what we should do about this, but I think we do have to go on talking about it and find out if STC owns the sets, if DDC owns the sets. I mean, that seems to be a crucial piece of information, and I would hope that the acting town clerk might be able to get to the bottom of that, and then look at the information that is available to the public as to how they can apply to get them if they want them. Because I also understand from comments that have been made on Facebook that procedure has been as clear as mud as far as I can tell.
No.
People didn't understand it or couldn't find it, or there was no link from our website to the DDC website or whatever.
I think it's over and done with now. The sets have gone. But we should say that we didn't know about it. I don't want to be thought of as slippery or whatever.
Okay. I won't take, well.
sorry, two of the councillors have spoken and I haven't spoken at all.
Okay.
So two quick things. I mean, it's great that Dover District are allowing members of the public to apply, and I believe there is a link with the latest up-to-date information. Let's publicise that. Councillor Silvercar, you made a comment about Waite's Garage. I don't quite follow.
Well, according to Councillor Friend on Facebook, nobody wanted the sets. No one from the public wanted the sets, and Waits applied for them and got them.
That's not true.
Well, that's what Councillor Friend said.
That's not
Well,
true.
I
That is
think
true.
I think you should leave it to
Okay.
the acting town clerk and myself to try and get to the bottom of this. And if we do get to the bottom of it, and there is still a possibility for people to apply, then we will put a procedure in place, which will involve the STC website providing a link to wherever one applies on the DDC website. Councillor Wiles, one more comment and that's it.
As far as I'm aware, the Guildhall and the Square forecourt are owned by DDC and leased to Sandwich Town Council, jointly in Severy and Silverbridge one. That means DDC own bricks and mortar, the physical fabric. I mean, it might need a lawyer to look at this, but as far as I'm aware, the sets will be owned by DDC, not by STC.
Right.
City Council.
That is fine. I don't think this is the point. The point is the public didn't know anything about it. There is no link.
I'm sorry, I disagree. Sorry, no, I will speak. DDC have put out enough stuff on their website. Sarah Holland's been in the town. They've done all the consultations.
I have been.
And the only reason,
the
only reason that people are kicking off about the sets,
I think you should only speak once.
and people think that Malcolm Waite has taken all the sets, and that's not true. everyone is
didn't
entitled
fail.
to, everyone is entitled
It did
to
not
ask
fail.
for the request to have some sets done, and which they have done.
Yeah.
And if anyone has any more questions about it, they need to speak to Councillor Friend, because he's the DDC member for Sandwich.
There's absolutely no point in
I
speaking
going to
councillor
bring
Friend.
this discussion to an end now.
Okay.
And if you will leave it to the acting town clerk and myself to try and get to the bottom of it and try and put some procedure in place for people to apply for sets. Okay, so item 2 is apologies for absence.
Councillor Friend, DDC work documents.
Councillor Friend, I believe he posted publicly as well, but he messaged me earlier. He has an overview and scrutiny meeting for Dearborn District Council, so he can't attend sadly, but he has provided an update to me on 1 or 2 matters, which I'll be more than happy to share on his behalf.
Good, thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest. To receive any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests from members in respect of business to be transacted on this agenda. Councillor Southside.
Yes, I have I believe it's another significant interest in item, where are we? Item 6.2 in terms of the schoolhouse. I'm the governor of Sandwich Infant School.
Okay, and that was something that we took into account at the last meeting, and in fact you stayed in the meeting and...
Yes, I have an update from the governors, which I'll be reading out.
Okay, thank you. Item 4, public participation. A 15-minute session is set aside for members of the public to make representations. Do we have any?
We've got 3.
Okay.
Mrs. George.
Want me to stand here? Or?
Yeah.
Where else? Thank you. I wanted to speak with respect to an item which you have on the agenda, and that's the speeding issues in Woodensborough and St Bart's. As Secretary to the Town Team and as a resident of Moat Sole, we've long been extremely concerned about speeding traffic totally in Sandwich, which appears now to be escalating. In fact, traffic issues have been on the Town Team agenda for about 10 years. Hence the Lorry Watch survey, resulting in the traffic orders prohibiting lorries over 7.5 and entering the town unless delivering or conducting business. In 2018, the Town Team carried out a Sandwich-wide traffic survey, which was endorsed by Sandwich Town Council, and the data produced became the basis for the Sandwich Highway Improvement Plan, or the current, as I understand it, the current plan that is there now. The main problem highlighted by residents, even in 2018, was speeding traffic. The survey asked householders to rank in order from highest to lowest their concerns on 9 traffic issues in Sandwich. 414 households contributed to the survey, although about 4,000 questionnaires were delivered, and we thought that was a poor response rate, but I understand it's not, is it? So it wouldn't work in a major government survey. Anyway, the data was as followed. Speeding, 77.5% of respondents said they ranked speeding as their highest issue. Heavy vehicles and parking. I have got the data here. I won't read it out because I can send this to be circulated, but it goes right the way through to the nine headings. St Bart's Road was 85.7% noted speeding as their main issue. That was followed by heavy vehicles and dangerous parking. Woodensborough Road, 89.5% noted speeding as their main issues, followed by 73.7% for heavy vehicles and, again, dangerous parking. Moat Sole had 66% for speeding. We have quite a lot of people who live at the other end, that are in the piece by the Red Cow, that aren't necessarily affected. And I've got all that data and I can make it available. There were many delays in the production of the HIT report, and I'm only warning about this because I think it is an issue if you're going to want to do something about speeding in general in St Bart's, Woodensborough or anywhere else. And in fact, although the HIT report was eventually produced, KCC still then asked for us to put it in an order of priority, because as a parish council we're only allowed to have one item recognised per year, and even then they don't necessarily pay for that. One of the things that was agreed, and we did eventually get through at the end of last year, so 2022, were the yellow lines. And the yellow lines were, we amalgamated 5 areas for yellow lines. St Bart's Road was one of them, as the entrance and exit to St Bart's either end, and Woodensborough Road at the corners of the junctions. At that point, Moat Sol was one of the areas that did ask for yellow lines, but chicane yellow lines for parking, and nothing actually came. We never got any feedback. It's the only one that KCC did not respond to. My problem is that I fully endorse anything that will reduce speeding in St Bart's Road or in Woodensborough Road, but my concern is that these people drive ridiculously fast. They often come through Moat Sol, and because they've been held up at the level crossing, they put their foot down to come through and either zoom into the co-op car park or carry on through the town. And I think that anything that now happens is going to be a problem unless we incorporate Moat Sol with looking at speeding issues with St Bart's and Woodensborough Road, because it becomes a rat run, and there's far more traffic coming down there now than there was before because we've got new housing estates. So it really is a concern. The drivers hate being held up at the crossing or anywhere else, and so that is really dangerous. Moat Sol also has probably one of those only roads from there that actually the houses open up, front doors open up straight onto the roadway, and that in itself causes issues. People walking along often have to step into the road to get past another person, and people are liable to get hit. We know people who've had wing mirrors hit their shoulders and all sorts at the speed at which people are going. So when we asked for chicane yellow lines. We practice it on a Sunday and sometimes in the evening when residents will park either side of the road, allowing enough space for the co-op lorry to come through, because it comes early in the morning and on Sundays. So we know that has to work, but it does slow the traffic, and actually it doesn't really cost any money. So this is what I would like someone to, if you are going to look at this as a whole, I'd like that to be considered for Moat Sol once again. And I think the other piece I'd like to explain to you is that I've got all the comments here from residents in St Bart's as well as the data. I have data for the whole of the town in terms of speeding, people's concerns about speeding. But one of the things that the town team did, because we were so concerned about speeding, was one of our members, Simon Byers, who is here tonight, actually led the Speedwatch campaign, and he has a lot of information that he's been gathering, as well as the initiative that he's set up to do. So that's all I really wanted to say, but I am very concerned that we've had 2 accidents in the past two months in Moat Sol, and one of them was just last week. So if you can consider us, I'd like you to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's the next person?
Mr. Byers.
Good evening. Following on from what Carol said, I looked at, when I moved into Sandwich, I found that speed obviously is faster than I was expecting in a 20-mile-an-hour zone. And when anybody mentions speed enforcement, the immediate response is that no one is being killed. So that set me off in 2 directions. Firstly, to look at Speedwatch, and this is basically a group of volunteers who are willing to stand on the roadside and monitor the traffic. This is authorised by the police, and the volunteers must abide by those rules. Now, those that are seen to speed are reported to the police, who can then deal with the culprit, but in reality, whereas speed watch can be found to reduce speedings by some and remind drivers to abide by the limits, it is quite restricted. Volunteers can only stand in certain approved locations. We can only be present in fine weather, in daylight hours, and not in icy conditions, and we must be clearly visible. All the locations approved allow for us to be able to step back should our high-vis jackets frighten the drivers to lose control of their vehicle. Having mentioned these failings, I still think Speedwatch has its place, and with more volunteers we could collectively provide factual information to encourage the appropriate authorities to take more serious preventative action. KCC Highways is the authority who approves and controls where and if we have road signs. The police do not currently have the manpower to work with any more speed cameras, but we could install speed indicated displays known as SIDs, which do also collect data. KCC Highways do not want to approve these for 20-mile-an-hour zones, and from my communications they seem reluctant to do anything about speed. As they do not have any cameras that are suitable, I've introduced them to a manufacturer that supplies many other counties, and they find it works well. KCC have met them and criticised their equipment. This company, called Travello, have improved their SIDs and are now finding it very difficult to be able to discuss this with KCC. This is consistent with my dealings with that department. Today, KCC say they are not happy with the mounting system as it needs bolts. Travello have asked what system they have on the cameras that they do approve, and we'll wait an outcome on that. Sandwich Town Council has agreed that they are in favour of the use of SIDs in Sandwich. I would urge the council to be more proactive in obtaining them. We need them now. Now, the other direction that I focused on is how speed has other implications that do not get considered in the UK as much as they should. In 2009, a report was commissioned by the UK Noise Association, and they said that road traffic is the biggest cause of noise pollution in the UK. It disturbs 12 million people. There is a measurable link between traffic noise and speed. In urban areas with speeds of between 20 and 35 miles an hour, reducing speeds by 6 miles an hour would cut noise levels by up to 40%. International bodies recognise speed as a factor. The European Conference of Transport Ministers and Organisations for Economic Cooperation and Development state that appropriate speed limits should also take into consideration noise levels generated by traffic for people living in the surroundings. Their conclusion is that cutting speeds is the most immediate and most cost-effective way of reducing traffic noise. Traffic noise impact should be measured not in terms of overall levels of noise, but also peaks. The World Health Organization has found that during the day people start to get moderately annoyed at noise of 50 decibels and seriously at 55 decibels. Millions of people in the UK are daily exposed to noise levels higher than those recommended by the World Health Organization. Traffic noise triggers a complex chain of responses affecting human health and well-being. After prolonged exposure, the impacts of annoyance, stress and sleep disturbance can result in heart disease, high blood pressure and mental illness. Traffic noise disrupts hearing, learning and understanding, impacts which are particularly significant for child development. Long-term exposure to the level of noise can cause hearing loss, and the effects can also impact on wildlife. For effective enforcement, the best way to secure wider compliance and steadier driving is for drivers to be sure that limits are being enforced, which they're not in Sandwich. When it comes to the effects of traffic-induced vibrations, they may be small and imperceptible. However, they may become the reason of a major malfunction or even lead to the collapse of a structure. Apart from the influence on a building, traffic-induced vibrations also affect people living in places where the vibrations occur. The problem is extremely significant in cases of long-lasting influence of noise and vibrations on people. From my research, it seems very clear that speed limit enforcement in Sandwich is essential but for the well-being of people and for the long-term protection of the buildings we treasure.
Caroline likes something.
Good evening. My name is Caroline Latham, and I'm speaking tonight on behalf of Sandwich Environment Conservation Group, commonly known as SEDG, and as a very concerned resident. Our question to you is this. Having declared a climate emergency in March 2021, what plans do STC have to reflect and implement environmental and biodiversity strategic objectives, policies, and procedures? We understand this work will be initiated by this committee, chaired by Councillor Claire Ungerson, and we are delighted to see that this critical matter is on your agenda for discussion this evening. We cannot reinforce enough the urgency for councils at all levels to play their part in addressing this urgent issue. The 2022 findings of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change states that human activity is the main driver for rising global temperatures, that the alarm bells are deafening, and the evidence is irrefutable. They warn that the world is set to reach 1.5 centigrade level much sooner than originally thought, within the next 2 decades. This is the limit set to avoid the very worst of climate impacts, and that only drastic action will help prevent an environmental disaster. Their report warned that otherwise the world is very close to reaching tipping points on climate change, meaning that we will have gone beyond the point where the damage can be repaired. And for any parent here, think of your children and grandchildren. For many years now, scientists have been warning about the catastrophic results on the climate if the world reaches average temperatures of 1.5 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels. And according to the World Research Institute, global temperatures have so far risen by 1.1 degrees centigrade. And already we are seeing an increase in natural disasters such as flooding, hurricanes, and other events. This should be a stark enough warning to all of us to make the changes we need. Radical action is needed at every level: personal, parish, town, district and county, as well as nationally and internationally. We also know that destruction of the green environment is both diminishing carbon sink as an asset for reducing global warming and destroying wildlife habitats. It is very worrying that Britain has lost almost half of all of its biodiversity, far below the global average of 75%, and the highest loss of all G7 nations. And I, for one, think it's shameful. STC's mission statement should clearly state that the Council has declared the climate emergency and is committed to taking internal actions and influencing its constituents and local businesses to act, no more plastic bags for one, in order to ameliorate the impact of the climate and biodiversity crises. An Environment and Biodiversity Working Party be set up to address this work, reflecting both the climate and the nature crisis. STC must state its intention to reflect these issues within its day-to-day running, its policies, its strategic objectives, committee frameworks, and public communications, thus embedding these matters into all of its operations. And whilst recognising that parish and town councils may not be as powerful as local authorities, they can be a force for change regarding these issues and can lead by example. A number of other local councils are progressing well with this, and again, shame on us for being behind them, and can be used as models for STC to draw on best practice, rather than reinventing the wheel. Deal, Faversham and Walmer Town councils are very noteworthy examples. SCG has researched and has some useful information which we think will support the council's work going forward, including some headline ideas from Friends of the Earth publication, Actions that Parish and Town Councils can take on the climate and nature emergency, to support your discussions. There will be an email with further resources to follow, which we hope will provide some of the groundwork needed to progress these issues. And with your permission, I'll just give you a handout. But we need to do something, and I am humbly begging you. Thank you. Thank you. Could you share? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll all have noted that there are close links between the three contributors, traffic management and climate change are closely linked. And I think we will, I'm sure we will work on those matters which are the responsibility of this committee. So thank you for your contributions, and I will now move to item 5, which is about Fellowship Walk, and item 5 has an attachment 1, which includes a screenshot of the fact that the application to build 10 apartments and commercial floor space on that land at Fellowship Walk has been refused planning permission. And I thought it would be useful for the committee to think about recommending to the full council that we make inquiries about possible purchase by the council of that land, and that we have a discussion, not too long a discussion, about what that land might be used for. And we did start thinking about those issues at the last committee meeting. So I've suggested 2 recommendations. First, that the committee recommend that the council make inquiries concerning possible purchase of the land, and second, that we make suggestions to the council as to what that land might be used for, should negotiations for purchase be successful. Councillor Sampson.
Yeah, so I think it's important that we all welcome and appreciate that obviously the local, so the application was rejected. I think that's absolutely brilliant. I mean, everyone's very satisfied with that.
Yeah.
And yeah, obviously the state it's currently in is not good. I know that planning enforcement are hopefully looking at getting rid of the ugly state of the land as soon as possible. The district is pursuing that, that's brilliant as well, but I've got some severe reservations here, because if we're going to approach this person and ask to potentially buy it, we're attaching value to this land, and maybe we should ask with them, but I think they're going to ask a price that's far too high. And while it'd be good to have, we have massive other priorities. We'd be spending a hell of a lot of money, of which we use to run this council, to run this building, to run our other assets, to pay for grants we give out every year. I think we want to be ultra cautious about this and not guarantee that we can just buy it at whatever price. That's what I'm really concerned about. We want to be really careful about this.
Yeah, I think it is the case that land that does not have planning permission is just land.
I know, but now he knows the council wants to buy it. We're on camera.
Well, we haven't made that decision, but we're talking about it. Councillor Marie.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Sampson. The other thing is if we do want to buy the land, we need to get a couple of evaluations done on the land to say for at least 2 or 3 valuers to say how much the land is actually for, because the gentleman in question will put the price up sky high, and I believe it would cost more than what it's actually worth. So I believe that we should do that as well.
No, of course. I mean, what obviously would involve valuers before anything was said. Councillor Heaven and then Councillor Franklin.
Yeah, I was going to make the same suggestion that if we get a objective valuation, then to some extent that would cut across the notion that the owner can impose whatever price they think. I think it does link in with the climate emergency declaration, because when we wish to buy the land or want to buy the land and what we plan to do with it, we should take into account our own climate emergency declaration, so that any uses for the land reflect that in terms of the use. For example, parkland as opposed to a car park, for example.
Also,
Councillor Franklin.
I thought we really asked Councillor Carter to talk to the owner of the land.
And do you know if he has talked?
I believe he has.
And do you know?
Well, I'm not saying because I don't know. I know he was asked to speak to him, and I think he has spoken to him. I don't know what the result of the talk is.
Okay.
And also, most of us remember it was just as a meadow. So really, it's agriculture. It's just meadow land. It's not building land. It's just meadow land. And it should be, if it gets rated, it rated what it was agreed was a meadow land.
Yes. Councillor Wiles.
I think my memory is that Councillor Carter was asked to speak to the father of the owner, because the son might not be so
Forthcoming.
Councillor Secretary.
I just wondered, are you suggesting that Sandwich Town Council buy it or Sandwich Tollbridge Fund?
Well, that would be another question. But we would, I mean, what I am suggesting is that we should decide this evening whether we wish to recommend to the council, but we could also include the Tollbridge Fund. We could make the same recommendation for the Tollbridge Fund.
Well, I think it would have to be.
Or indeed, if it's set up as a separate charity, to the trustee of the Madam's bequest, that inquiries be made, and obviously valuation. I mean, you know, we can't just go in there and say we're prepared to pay blah blah. We have to get professional valuers involved in
I was just thinking that Sandwich Town Council doesn't have any money and already relies on the Tollbridge Fund for a lot of wages and other office expenses.
So yes,
I'm for buying this. I'm just saying I don't think Sandwich Town
No,
Council.
okay, well then we should make the recommendation to the Tollbridge Fund.
so if I could put a proposal on the table then, so suggesting things tonight.
With your permission, may I say a few things?
Yes, I think so, yes.
First of all, I've not heard it explained why you want to buy this land. What's
No,
the
we haven't
point?
talked about that.
The gentleman in question can charge what he likes, irrespective of how it's valued. So it makes no difference what valuation you get. Possibly I don't understand those, I'll take your word for it. You talked about potentially using the Georgina Maddox Fund. I think councillors, that was just mentioned,
I did just mention it.
I think councillors should be asking themselves whether they should involve the residents in how they spend that money. Because the money was left to the town, not the town council. And it's just astonishing.
Was
that
actually
you're
You shouldn't have said that.
It was left to the town council.
It was left to Sandwich Town Council.
Could I answer?
Can I finish what I was saying?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't realise.
It's all right, sorry, you make a good point. And actually, first part of the proposal would be, let's find out what on earth Councillor Carter heard back. Second bit, for 8 people in the room recommending something to 16 people in another room, let's hear what the people have to say. Let's find a way of actually speaking to them and see what they would like to be done with the land, and if they'd actually like to do it. And yeah, if we're going to do this business valuation, that's going to cost us money. Let's figure out how much this is going to cost. 3-part proposal, something along those lines, happy to be amended, but yeah, so we can move forward.
Could I just say something very quickly to Mrs Summerhays?
Yes.
I'd just like to say, in Councillor Ungerson's defence, she actually wanted members of the public on the Georgina Maddox committee, but she was voted down.
No, she was not.
No, she was not.
Oh, we're going right off the chairman, we're going right off the subject, you've got to be firmer.
No, yes.
We're going
Wait a minute, she's firmer than you.
Yes.
Oh, is she?
No, look, this,
Thank you.
that's not a relevant argument. So what you're saying, what I hear you're saying is that we don't want to make inquiries about possible purchase before we have actually considered what the land might be used for. At the moment, I think we can all acknowledge that the land is a complete eyesore, and we don't want that to become the status quo. I mean, that's how I feel, that it has to look better and be utilised in a way which contributes to the welfare of this community. But we haven't actually discussed any ideas as to what it might be used for. I have some myself. Well, one of them that Councillor Hepburn has suggested is parkland. And I would support the planting of trees. I've always talked about an outdoor gym, but then get shouted down by people who defend the local gym and say we don't need an outdoor gym. But there are all sorts of ideas as to what it might be used for. An amenity specifically for small children, perhaps. I mean, there are all sorts of things. And the other thing that we have to take into account is that the land is apparently prone to flooding, so that's another issue. We've got some suggestions from Councillor Sampson. I wasn't quite clear what you were.
Yeah, so going with what we're generally talking about and what Mrs Summerhays has said as well, to try and find a way forward, we know that Councillor Carter has reached out. So first part, let's find out what he heard back.
Yeah.
Second part, we agree that we recommend to council, if we are going to go ahead with this, we consult the members of the town in some way, whether they A, want it to happen, or B, don't want it to happen. And then if it was to be agreed what it would be used for, obviously taking into account what we can't use the area for anyway. And the third part being business valuation in terms of land evaluation in terms of what would be a reasonable price for it. We'd have to look into what that cost might be.
Yes.
So something along those lines. I think that covers most of the points
Yes.
we've discussed.
Okay, have you noted all those points?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah.
I second that.
Well, it's hardly a motion. I mean,
Well, it is. He's put 3 points in.
Okay. So do we? So the 3 points are: first, we'll find out
From
what
Councillor.
discussions have already taken place between Councillor Carter and the owner's son, or the owner. Secondly, conduct a survey or
Consultation with the people.
find some way of asking local residents what they would like to see the land used for. And thirdly, engage valuers to give us a valuation of the land.
To find out
Is that
what the
right?
cost of the valuers would be.
Yeah.
I thought you said to ask the public whether they want us.
Yes, that would have to be an absolutely part of it, whether they actually want us to do it.
Yeah.
As well. That maybe would be one
Well,
of the
they,
first
they
steps.
won't be able to make that an informed answer unless they know how much it would cost. That's the problem. But we could do those 3 things simultaneously. Okay, so everybody prepared to vote for that? It's been seconded by Councillor Marie. Councillor Wiles, are you? Okay, so it's voted NEMCOM, nobody against it. Right, so I think that's item 5. And item 6 is empty buildings in Sandwich. And the first empty building is Wayfarers, which is covered by attachment 2, or has attachment 2 attached to it, which suggests,
I didn't get anything to do with, sorry, Wayfarers.
There's an application for planning permission,
But it's empty.
but it's actually, this doesn't actually inform us, this screenshot doesn't inform us as to what it's for. There is actually an application for planning permission for wayfarers to change use from its present, well, its previous function as a care home to, I think it's 15 independent living units for disabled children, I think. It's disabled children, it's not disabled adults.
Adults.
People with learning disabilities.
It's people with
autism.
learning disabilities, including adults.
And it's from a private company.
Yes.
It's not clear if they have a lease or if they've got an arrangement to buy the property, are not clear.
Right. Okay.
So,
Councillor Sampson, then Councillor Civica.
yeah, so for the benefit of everybody else behind us, is that we're looking basically at a piece of paper that doesn't really say anything. I presume the planning committee must have had sight of this. Is that, what did they say? I'm not a member of the planning committee.
It didn't come through, did it?
No, it didn't come through in time. You know that because Councillor Friend's email.
And I've been on holiday, my girlfriend's birthday.
Can you talk through the chair? So this has not yet been considered by the planning committee.
Will it be?
But we don't, I mean, it's really a question of informing ourselves as Heritage and Townscape, rather, I mean, we don't have a part in making a decision as to whether we support this change use or not.
And my only issue is that we don't really have any info. So, myself, who I like to try and learn as much as possible for these meetings, I've been away, so as the average member of the town of Sandwich, wouldn't really understand what's actually going on. Like, are we going to make sure this is, my recommendation, my proposal was, we send this to the planning committee straight away, if it hasn't already, and we find out the exact date we've got the latest to do that.
Yeah.
This is massively important, if not in full council.
Yeah, I mean, it's on this agenda because we have talked about wayfarers being empty for the last 2 or 3 meetings. And just shortly before I left to go on holiday, it was announced that there was a planning application for wayfarers to change use. So I thought it was important to put it back on the agenda of this committee, simply to inform ourselves. There is no reason for us to express a particular opinion or make a recommendation. In fact, that would be illegitimate because that is not our function. But I just thought it was important that we are informed as a committee that this apparently empty building which has been empty for a considerable amount of time is now apparently, there is a company, private company, as Councillor Wiles has said, interested in developing it for another residential care use, but in this particular case for disabled people with learning disabilities.
So I've got to say, that's absolutely brilliant. It's just, we have that information from an item for note, but we don't actually have any information to note. That's the thing I'm a bit confused about.
It is, if you don't want to speak, if it is possible that one of the councillors present may have been able to add some more information, as there are a number of councillors here, so that might be the purpose of it.
Does anybody have any info?
I do.
Well,
Yeah.
I really don't want to spend time on arguing about whether we've been properly informed or not. I think you have now been properly informed.
So can everybody just, for the benefit of everybody, exactly what the situation is with wayfarers? Because it means a lot to people in the town. So what are we looking at?
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting.
Well,
I speak now?
Councillor Wiles and then Councillor Civica.
Councillor Siv, sorry, Councillor Fickle had her hand up first.
Before Councillor Sampson, but it doesn't matter. You go, Councillor Wells.
So this should have appeared on the planning committee last week. It didn't. I'm not clear why it didn't.
Yeah.
The acting town clerk will inform me as chair of the planning committee. I think we need to check what the deadline is for submission of comments as consultee, and if we're going to miss the deadline because the next planning committee is after the deadline, then probably we need a special extraordinary planning committee meeting so that we can pass through our comments, because obviously it's an important application.
100%.
So that's the situation.
Thank you. I would like to suggest a motion that we write to whoever it is, Councillor Chandler or whoever, at KCC, and just find out exactly what is going on. I mean, does the planning application usually go before you've bought the land, or you've even got a lease on the land? And also, there's another question. If this is private, this is the same as housing with care, but Councillor Chandler said this land wasn't suitable for housing with care. Do you remember, Councillor Heaven?
Yeah.
Because we would have liked it kept for elderly people. So how can it possibly be passed?
Right. Well,
I'm happy with it. I think it's a great idea. It's better than houses, but
yes.
I think
I think these are issues that the planning committee has to consider. I don't think that those are issues for us with this committee. I mean, as I say, this was just a matter of information for this committee, given that we have looked at wayfarers for the past 2 or 3 meetings. Okay?
Yeah.
So, did you want to say something? Okay. So, can we look at the Limes, New Street and Schoolhouse? And I was rather hoping that Councillor Chandler would be here to give us a verbal update. Was it
I
Councillor
asked
Chandler?
Councillor Friend,
Oh,
but he said
and
he
he's
hasn't
not
got
able to.
information to
Okay.
share with the committee.
Okay, so Councillor Sampson, you said that you had something.
Yeah, so again, I've got to highlight my interest as a governor of Sandwich Infant School. So to give an update to full council at the moment, to Heritage Townscape at the moment, all I can really say is that governors have discussed it. So we had our last governor meeting on my birthday last month. I'm very interested in
Dedication.
but yeah, so looking at all the options with regards to the schoolhouse, including what we do with it, if or when we acquired it, and we're also consulting with Aquila, so Sandwich Infant School is part of the Aquila Trust. I've got a meeting as a governor with the head later this week to discuss it further, and hopefully also maybe with the chair of governors. I've also consulted with the town team chair for his advice, which has been gratefully received. The information received from Councillor Chandler has been very helpful from a KCC perspective as to the building. The one thing I've got to say though, if residents see work happening around the building, don't be alarmed. They're just making sure they're doing fire safety checks, because it's very important. It's right next to the school, as I'm sure we can all understand. Yeah, so until I've had these further meetings regarding the schoolhouse with the governors to decide what exactly we're going to do with KCC, just asking that residents, the council, refrain from public comments, anything to that effect at the moment. We're probably going to need your support in the future if we go ahead with it, so give us a chance to figure out what we're going to do first. That's basically it.
Thank you.
can I just ask, through the chair,
Yes.
I didn't really understand what they're doing. Are they thinking of buying it, the school, or?
That's what I've just said, we're figuring that out. So what we'd
Oh,
use it for,
so-
if we
okay.
were to try and put an offer in.
Ah, okay, yeah, I didn't understand what you were telling us not to talk about.
Could you just repeat that, Councillor Sampson?
So,
Because I'm not sure I heard it, and I'm not sure. that-
okay, so I can start again.
So,
So yeah, governors discussed it, very enjoyable birthday of mine.
yes, we've had all that.
Layman's terms.
That
Yeah,
just-
so we're consulting with Aquila, so Sandwich Infant School is part of the Aquila Trust. The governors themselves are figuring out if we were to approach the KCC to get a schoolhouse, what we would use it for. Exactly what we'd use it for. So obviously we can't just jump in and say, oh, we'd quite like that. I've got a meeting with the head later this week, hopefully the chair of governors, approached Richard Ralph, town team
Yes,
chair. for
we've heard
advice.
all that. So the question from Councillor Sivakaya was, what is the school intending to do? Is it intending to lease the building or
What are you
buy the
discussing?
building?
So- I think I've said it a few times, we're figuring out what we're going to be doing. Literally this
Okay.
week, I've got these meetings coming up.
Investigations.
Yeah, we need to,
Investigation whether to buy it or not.
you can basically say that the school's figuring out what we'd do if we were to get it.
Okay, so it is on the school, so that Acton Town Park, the minute can be that this has been discussed by the school and the school governors,
Yes.
and that they will be taking some plans for that building forward to
If we decide
KCC, to KCC and
So it's with the governors at the moment, we're figuring out what we're going to be doing, and then further updates will come to Sandwich Town Council maybe via myself or sent, depending on what obviously happens in May.
Can I just
Thank
ask a
you.
very quick question?
Yeah.
So it's owned by KCC currently?
So the schoolhouse, I forget the exact acronym, but it's the Property Park KCC.
Right, okay, thank you.
Yeah, and to highlight again, they're carrying out fire safety checks around the building, so if you see workmen running around, please don't be alarmed.
Okay, thank you. And do we have anything on the limes in New Street?
Seems to be bashing it all down, doesn't it?
Something does seem to be
Yeah.
happening, but
It's
nobody
getting
knows.
smaller and smaller.
Well, Sarah George says she does.
Well, because it's been on the town team agenda for months,
Yes.
and we were told by councillor Friend that originally, or not originally, a few months back, DDC had met with the current owners of the building, and they had been given an option that they had to make the building safe and usable now, and that DDC had given them specific time frames on which they had to meet the owners had to meet, in order that those schedules could be met. If they didn't meet those schedules, DDC would put in a compulsory purchase order, or could put in a compulsory purchase order to take it on. Councillor Friend said at the last town team meeting, when we asked, that everything DDC had set as far as a schedule had been met, and that the planning department at DDC were satisfied that those plans were on schedule. And that doesn't mean that they're massively progressing, but we don't know what the actual schedule was in terms of turning it into a habitable property. And that was minuted in the town team minutes. So.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
We'll have to get all our notes from you.
Okay, I think we should move on to the next item, but I think we should also keep an eye on other empty buildings in Sandwich, in particular the Admiral Owen, which remains empty and an eyesore, and we might come back to that on the next agenda. Item 7, a Sandwich Waterways Working Group to receive a report and verbal update from Councillor Heaven regarding Sandwich Waterways, and there's also an attachment 3, which I think is the minute or the note that we made on the very first meeting.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, my update tonight is very much more of an update than that. There was a meeting with representatives of the Environment Agency and the Internal Drainage Board last Thursday on site on the Delph opposite St Bart's Road, and it's become clear that the Environment Agency remain completely committed to improving the flow through the Delph and to increase the amount of water, fresh water, that is pumped from Worth Marshes through the town. There have been hold-ups, problems with that. They have to negotiate with landowners what water is extracted over towards Worth Marshes. There's some bank improvements they have to make on some land down there in case if they increase the water level it might cause some minor flooding, but they're committed to repair that. Today I saw Environment Agency workers putting brushwood bundles into the Delph at the house known as Mallard's, and the brushwood bundles will narrow the channel, thus making it faster, and enable them to scoop out silt and just dump it behind the brushwood bundles in order to improve the flow. The site meeting carried on through the town, and we actually got into the land of the brewery sluice via their quays, and that is a temporary delay, because at the brewery sluice, which is the point at which the Delph, having come all the way from Worth Marshes through the town, will then pour into the Stour, there is an engineering delay. A lump of concrete, they don't want to move any further too quickly in case that big piece of well-engineered concrete is holding something up and they have to work it out. But they are committed to solving that issue and solve that problem so that the Delph will be deeper, cleaner, faster through the town. The other aspect of the waterways through the town is, of course, the rope walk and the butts, which are a completely different kettle of fish, because that they were remnants of the moat. And if you can imagine what people used to chuck into moats, and then compare that with clean fresh water coming up the Delph, there's an historical conflict. But at New Street, and people may know this, there is a penstock sluice under New Street connecting the rope walk to the Delph. And it is possible, whether it's desirable or not, it is possible to allow small amounts of clean water from the Delph under New Street and into the rope walk, which is the site of the worst stagnation, dead fish and so on. As a result of that, there's going to be a meeting here at the Guildhall of the Waterways Working Group at 7 o'clock this Thursday. I haven't identified the room yet. All welcome. Following on from that, I'll draw up a draft of the report from the council, circulate that to members and interested members of the public for their comments, with a view to producing it by March or the end of March. It may well have certain questions for the council. Not that the council has the ability to decide any of this, but the council should certainly be encouraged to comment on it, such as, do we return fish to the rope walk? Is the rope walk to become a site of angling again, because it always was? If so, what fish? Do we allow water to flow from the reinvigorated Delph in small amounts into the rope walk in order to improve the quality of water there? Or, as some suggest, the rope walk and the butts are a historically distinct waterway, distinct from the Delph, a completely different function, and some would suggest it should be left as, in effect, a very long, thin garden pond, and treated as such, which would need a lot of volunteers. They are available to keep the waterweed down and to put oxygenating plants in to improve the quality of the water. These are all questions, and it may be that the working group may not come down on one side or other on all these questions, but they're questions for the town council. Bearing in mind that the town council doesn't have the final deciding role in this, but I do think that the work we've done so far does have an effect on Environment Agency priorities. So that, for example, on Thursday, we discuss with the Environment Agency about their innovative new use of bundles of brushwood to speed up the flow. And today, only a few days later, they start doing it. Mm-hmm. So we do have a role.
Yes, well, thank you very much. So I just want to ask Councillor Hemp, so about the timing. So you've said that you will draft a report after the next meeting,
Thursday,
which will be on Thursday, of the working group, and that report will come to this committee for comment, or members of this committee?
It will go to the members of the working group first, and also interested members of the public who contributed.
Yes.
it will then accumulate those and infiltrate it into the eventual report.
The final
Then
report.
the report would come to this
No,
committee.
it doesn't. No, actually,
Straight to
I
the
just
town council.
realised it will go straight to the council.
Straight
because
to the
the
town
council
council.
set up this working group.
Right, and then we'll need to discuss final detail about how it's produced, who produces it,
Yes.
how many copies.
Yes. And what the council agrees to do
Yeah.
with it. Yes. Thank you. And Councillor Franklin, then Councillor Sibicar.
Yeah, I like the way you don't use, I hate the word, but they say pond. That is the ancient town moat. We've got the town wall, which a lot of people don't realise, got the same significance as Stonehenge, got the same protection, and therefore really the moat should have the same protection as the town wall. And the reason why it's a town wall, and those that lived here long enough, I look at old photographs of Victorian, there used to be a weir under the Woodensborough Road Bridge, which they dug out 30 years ago when they put the new sewer, and I've been banging away for 30 years, and I've sent them loads of photographs. That water should be about 6 inches below the level of the grass on Cowley, and if you look, it's about 3 foot, even now it's lower than what it should be, because they sit up at Sturry, Southern Water, with a telemetry which is going by the cricket club, that sluice there. Because they think we're going to get a load of rain, they open a sluice there, and the water flows out the butts, what little bit is there, out the road wall, and then it goes into what it's called the Guestling Stream there when it goes around. But we do need that weir back under Woodensborough Road to maintain the historic level of water in the road, and that will also give us a greater depth of water for the fish, because you know in the summer months they're not enough oxygen in the water, is there?
No.
But what's that weir put him back under Woodensborough Road?
That wasn't mentioned, was it?
No.
No, it keeps getting forgotten, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, Councillor Sibicar and then Councillor Wiles.
I just wanted to say something through you to Councillor Heaven. Can we, or can you write the report if we don't actually know what DDC are going to do and what timescale it is? I mean, the Environment Agency were great, the Drainage Board were great, but there's a third partner that we haven't spoken to yet, unless you have privately, I don't know. So we can't write the report, can we?
We've got some updates, haven't we, about the unfortunate delays on improving the size of the pipe under the bridge to the cricket club.
But we don't really know about that, do we? Because they've been talking about that for years, and it keeps getting put back and put back. And also what Councillor Franklin's just said. You know, I believe that's DDC as well, is it? The weir under Woodensborough Road?
I don't know, it's just it's sort of such a funny area there, isn't it? The District Council, Water Board, but Southern, I mean, it was this Water Board that dug it out when they did the sewage part, so they had to get the Water Board and put it back again.
This is where it gets confusing, and it's DDC,
it's all these different
Environment
agencies.
Agency, Southern Water, KCC because of the road. It's just no one's taking responsibility of what
maintaining the level of the road.
Exactly
That has always obviously been a problem.
That's why it's been so terrible, the level of the water and road wall, because that weir's been took out.
Yeah.
I mean, perhaps it would be helpful if you talk to whoever is the person at DDC.
Thank you, Councillor Wiles.
So I think Councillor Wiles also wanted to say something, but Christina, if you'd like to say, okay?
Well, I'm happy to go
Yeah,
after
I
Councillor Wells.
said all along that we should bring in a Dutch engineer because they're the world experts at automation. To give an overarching view. But the interesting thing at the walkabout last week is that the water can come in from the Delf, both at New Street through the pipe, but it can also come in near the butts where there's a T-junction on the Delf stream. Part of it goes off to the brewery sluice, the Guestling, and part of it goes into South Polder Stream. So it can come in at both ends, and there can be a flow. I forget his name, the guy with the bobble hat. Peter?
Pete Dowling
From EA?
No.
Drainage.
He was saying he could have a flow at both ends, effectively, to help the stagnant situation with butts and the road walk. And I think the other thing he said was that he sees no problem with volunteers going into the butts and the road walk to clear debris and to clear footballs and litter and so on. He can't see any problem. I think DDC raised an issue about water voles, but he sees no problem with that. He's going to speak to DDC. So that could be a thing that the town team or other volunteers could organise, with waders and make it look much more attractive.
But without the pipe being expanded, the water can't come from the butts anyway, can it?
It can. He's rodded it, and he says it can be.
Ah,
Okay.
so it doesn't need doing.
So Christina, you wanted to say something?
Yes, it concerns me that there may be a key piece of information that's missing at the moment, and that is that the town team, councillor friend, referenced a work plan, a DDC work plan, and that involved the various other agencies as well. And he spoke of potentially that being circulated after it had been redacted, but that hasn't actually happened yet. And the latest communication I had with him is that he still wants some updates before it's circulated, but it seems to me that that might actually be a key piece of data there that would have to be taken into consideration in whatever report is written. And to go ahead without that, it risks compromising whatever is written, in all honesty.
I can see that. It would be a shame though if there's a problem about getting that work plan, if it delayed the delivery of the report. So there's a trade-off which perhaps you could talk to Councillor Friend about it, and if it seems that you won't get the redacted report in time for your report, the redacted work plan in time for your report, then I would, if I were you, I would abandon it, that possibility. But you can always ask him.
But by abandon, do you mean delay the report?
No.
Or go ahead and do it without it?
Yeah. It might be that there may be a project manager at DDC that you may be able to actually liaise with, as opposed, so you may be able to go direct with someone that's actually been dealing with the work, and that might be worth having a go at doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was Darren Solly that this gentleman that we've already spoken to. I think he would be the officer that advised that the pipe work would be taking place later this year, the enlarged pipe and the silting, if I remember rightly, Councillor Haddon. And so Darren Solly might be the officer that could just confirm what they were going to do and when they were going to do it.
Yeah.
When is the operative word?
Yeah, and he said he couldn't do it because of the water voles, the breeding season, until that was over, which would take us into the autumn.
And
I want to bring this to an end now because we are actually being rather slow through this agenda. So I think we've got a timeline on the report, we've got information about the next meeting and some suggestions as to who Councillor Heaven should contact at DDC. Okay, item 8 on tourist information, to receive and note the minutes of the Tourist Information Working Group, which is attachment 4, and to receive a verbal update from Councillor Wiles regarding tourist information provision in Sandwich. So if you could be brief, if possible, Councillor Wiles.
Yeah, the notes are self-explanatory. The next meeting is this Wednesday. We're going to be looking at various leaflets, and the Compass Group are going to be reporting back on the walkabout they did around town with the eyes of a tourist arriving at the station, arriving at the quay. We're reaching a kind of conclusion in terms of what happens to the tourist, what's currently called the Visitor Information Centre, which I think should be renamed the Tourist Office, because that's a clearer name. And the 6 options really are looking at keeping it where it is, moving it into the museum, moving it back into the old office here at the front of the Guildhall. That's 3. Moving it into St Peter's Church, which is open from 10 till 3 every day of the week, 10 till 4 in summer. Moving it into a retail unit, possibly in a deal with the retailer, or moving it into a kind of pop-up kiosk, perhaps on the new forecourt. So those are the kind of 6 options in outline, and hopefully this week we'll come to some kind of conclusion about what we recommend on that.
Thank you. And can you remind us when the meeting is, and will you be
It's
putting
in-
out publicity?
It's in the gallery of the Guild Hall at 5:30 on Wednesday.
And could you put, because it's not actually on the attachment,
Yeah, I'll publicise it.
could you?
Yeah.
And when do you expect to bring a report to this?
I would hope this will either be the last meeting or there might be one more meeting, and I'll bring a report to the next meeting of this committee in
Right.
March and to the council
Okay, that would be
with
very
clear
helpful.
recommendations.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, item 9, a key public conveniences working group to receive a verbal update from Councillor Sampson on the membership and progress of this working group. Councillor Sampson.
Yeah, so before we get into it, we need to clarify it's not the Key Conveniences Working Group, nor the funny name I'd rather call it, because Council just asked me to get feedback from the public and report back, so we can't really call it a working group. So yeah, as everyone will recall, I was asked to come to full council.
I think we can call it a working group, I think we did, but
Thank
we
you.
decided that you would be the only member of it, I think that was.
Well, no, we decided.
But anyway, let's get into complicated procedures.
Well, no, it's not a working group because we need a certain amount of members, and we don't want to do things wrong. I think you pointed that out at the meeting. But what was it? Yeah, so sadly the sound inherited interest in toilets group is not to be. But yeah, it was tasked individually with compiling feedback from the public, local organisations about the key conveniences, trying to get the public feedback via an online survey, advertised online and on town notice boards. Also attended the tourism working group to speak about it as well. Thank you for the invitation. Also gave out my personal phone number, which was on the, well, it's online anyway. So people can call me if they had any feedback they didn't want to do it online. I'm very happy to say I received 155 responses to the survey.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That's plus almost a dozen telephone calls and one letter.
Amazing.
So putting that into comparison, we've done similar online surveys for the Folk and Ale, and the most we ever got was 118, and that's with offering a prize. So clearly this is an issue that people feel quite strongly about. I also sent out individual emails to individual businesses, local organisations, community groups that were nearby as well. A good portion of them have replied. I'm just chasing the last few. So I think I've sort of said a few times, but I've been away for my partner's birthday just this past weekend. But I'm hoping the report will be submitted in due time for the consideration of council. I can't really drill down into all the details right now because I don't have them all on me. But they're actually very interesting, very varied, especially the parts for sort of written feedback. Overall, mostly pleased by the interest from residents and the debate and interactions it prompted. What was it? I was actually asked the other day by a person my age if local politics can be boring. And I can now say with confidence it never is, as long as we're talking about local toilets.
Well, thank you very much. So do we have, again, I'm asking you about a timeline, so when do you think you'll be able to report to this committee? Will it be at the next meeting in a month's time?
So it entirely depends on the time I have left before certain deadlines. In terms of drilling down into the data, I can do that very quickly. I'm used to doing that sort of thing for work anyway. However, it's just getting those last responses from some of the local organisations around, because I think we do need to hear from them.
Yeah.
However, without wanting to be too exact, it depends. Either I could get everything back tomorrow and submit it literally tomorrow evening, or it may have to wait for the next month. I'd aim to get it done.
Well, it would be very helpful if you could produce it by next month.
Oh yeah, I'll get it done as soon as I can.
For this committee, yeah.
But that's the thing, if I can get it done in time, I'll send it to full council, because
Yeah.
you'll have to go there anyway.
Yes.
Any more feedback is more than welcome as well.
Okay. Councillor Sibrika and then
Really
Councillor
quick,
Howard.
I know. I just wanted to give Harry some Councillor Sampson some feedback about the toilet. At the weekend, 2 different families, and I have this on video as well, tried to use the toilet, but the card entrance wouldn't work. So
That's the problem.
one of the families actually said, okay, let's just go to deal then.
Yes.
And
So-
if I may, if you have the contact information for them and they want to get in touch, because we're looking at residents, visitors, business people, they're more than welcome to submit something anonymously as well.
One of them was a resident and their family. One of them I think was a tourist, the ones that went to Deal, they didn't ask.
Yeah.
So,
But anyway, feedback like that, we've been getting similar stuff. It's very varied, but the more the merrier.
I just wonder why it doesn't work. Just
Yes, well,
There's nothing we can do about
that is for the way to Colin, Councillor
Yeah, can we thank Councillor Sampson for his hard work on this?
Yeah.
He must be flushed with success.
Okay, then let's go. Item 10, traffic management in Woodnesborough Road and Moat Soul. I think we've already eloquently been told what the issue is. We haven't actually addressed traffic management yet. I mean, it's obviously amongst the priorities. We haven't addressed it directly at this committee, but I think it's important that we do, and I would suggest that we do link Moat Soul into any consideration of what happens at Woodnesborough Road and the consequences of having those large new housing developments and so on. So I hope, I don't want to give the impression that I don't give this priority. I do, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. But Councillor Marie, if you've got a brief point.
Just a brief point, I agree with 100% what Mrs. George has said in her speech earlier on. Moat Soul, Woodnesborough, I live in the Hornflower estate on the back of the cemetery. It is an absolute nightmare. It's horrid to drive around. There needs traffic calming down St Bart's Road, Birch Avenue and so on, to the point of chicanes or something at least to just slow the traffic down. But I 100% agree with what Mrs. George has said, and I will support anything that goes through regarding traffic calming in the town.
Well, I think we will be talking about traffic management. I mean, we've got a lot on our agenda, obviously we've got a lot here. But we will address this as soon as possible.
Maybe if we could speak to, sorry, Councillor Long, so maybe we could speak to KCC again to see if we can get some 20 is plenty signs of back around the town, with a little initiative going around the town to bring it back in, because that's kind of disappeared over the last few years. The 20 is plenty initiative.
That's a good idea. Thank you. Okay, so we'll come back to that sooner rather than later, but not this evening. Item 11, provision of a temporary bus shelter during Guildhall forecourt works. And I put this on the agenda because I'd noticed on Facebook that people were complaining that, particularly in awful weather, at the moment there is no bus shelter, and the suggestion was made that temporary provision could be made by, which might include opening the main doors of the old part of Guildhall so people can shelter in the entrance. Now, is that something that we would like to recommend to the town council, and that it be done as quickly as possible? Councillor Sampson.
So yeah, I would agree. The only thing we have to be careful of is, of course, it has an adjoining door which leads to the courtroom, which means during museum opening hours you may need to have somebody in there in the room. So usually you'll have 2 volunteers, so you'll have one person in the main museum and one person in the courtroom. There may be somebody in there if that adjoining door is open, so we just have to bear that in mind, but otherwise, yeah.
Councillor Franklin.
Well, I know it's a good idea, but the winter's nearly over, so I'm worried because we used to have a bus shelter in the actual corner where that Windsor is, and then we had something there like had fish and chips and set light to it. So
Well, the acting party has just asked who's going to be manning this, and that is
That's
obviously the issue that Councillor Sampson
and
has
someone
raised.
hates it, used part of the building.
I mean, we could make we could support a recommendation to the council that the main doors of the old part of the Guildhall are open, contingent on there being a volunteer available to sit in the courtroom. I mean, is that?
My other concern is one of those adjoining doors as well also leads to the restroom for the PCSO and the community warden. Now I know sometimes if something's going on, they need to speak to someone in confidence. They go into that room and speak to the members of the public in there. The only thing I'm concerned about is someone going in there listening to what's been said, etc., or someone if there's something similar. So there's a bit of a conflict of interest in exactly that. Yeah, that's what I'm concerned about. With the vicar being in there as well, because that's their restroom as well.
Well, the point has been made by Councillor Franklin that maybe winter is over, but we never know in this country, do we? So how do you want to progress this?
Well, I think the staff
Not
weren't
progressive.
happy with it. I think the staff weren't happy with it when I asked the staff.
The staff weren't.
Well, no, because it's like it's a security issue, isn't it? It's the old
Yes.
part of the building. You know, it's a wooden timber frame building. There's lots. You only got to get some idiot in there, and with a, with an oily, wouldn't it, with fish and chips.
Yeah.
It'd be good if we had a camera up there or something. We haven't got a camera there, feeding into our camera system, which we don't have.
As the acting town clerk says on many emails, we just haven't got the staff in the Guildhall to do things.
So
So
it's stretched. Yeah, it was really stretched with staff.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that you don't want to progress this.
no,
Okay.
Okay.
That so we don't have
Quickly,
a
could I just say
recommendation.
something? Does this mean, because we don't want to open the doors, we don't want to progress with a temporary, I don't know, bus shelter or something?
Well, that's what we're saying.
Ah, okay, I thought you were just saying you didn't want to open the double doors at the end of the council building.
Well, are you suggesting that there should be a temporary bus shelter?
Well, I remember Christina coming to speak months ago about this. Of course, no one got back to her. But she did suggest some kind of temporary bus shelter. I think it was in November she suggested.
I think it's the town council's responsibility. It's bus shelters are always provided by the bus company.
Yes.
Yeah, but our bus shelter got
And
taken
because
away.
it's
from there.
and I do
It
believe
wasn't our bus shelter.
because
It was East Kent bus shelter.
because it's
the
a-
town council.
sorry, Mr. Mayor, because it's a fixed thing in concrete on the ground, you need planning permission to put one up as well.
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's too complicated.
Yeah.
It is too
And
complicated.
we will be getting a permanent bus
Yes.
shelter in the wrong place.
Not about providing umbrellas, free umbrellas.
Maybe we could stand by this.
Okay, let's move on.
Very quickly, just one tiny amendment to whatever we do go for. Maybe we suggest, we could always put it online a little bit. Oh, by the way, the museum's open between these particular hours, you can find a bit of refuge in there. It's something. And it also gets people going to our museum.
Yes, that's true. Yes, a notice perhaps on the door.
It's a very small
You
museum though, isn't it? There's a lot of people waiting for the bus.
More history to go around.
Okay, let's move on. Item 12, Bowling Street lighting, and we've got on attachment 5 an email including some previous correspondence from Councillor Chandler concerning this, and saying that this is an issue which has been discussed in the past with residents, and the residents have been told that they would have to find the money, they would have to seek funding from other bodies for appropriate heritage replacements. And that sounds to me like a no in capital letters.
I think so, but didn't we find this out before? And what we were worried about, was it that you had to buy the £10,000 light for KCC to approve it, or could you go and get a much cheaper light that looks the same?
Right.
So we're no further forward, are we?
No. I think what I suggest is that I should write to John Hennessy, who's the chair, I think, of that residents' association, who've been campaigning to get a heritage lamp, or 2 heritage lamps, and say this is what we've received from Councillor Chandler, and asking him what his, whether, I mean, I presume that the Residents' Association won't be satisfied with that answer, but I'll just ask for his response to it. Is that all right? I can't think of any. Yes, Councillor Hogan.
Well, and also to raise the point that Councillor Sivrakaya made.
There might be a cheaper version.
Is there a cheaper version, and does KCC insist on the £10,000 version?
Yes. Okay, I'll do that.
This whole area is a conservation area, isn't it?
Yes.
And if you look out here, this is quite dim lighting out here, isn't it? So I would have thought they're totally out of character for
They
being a
are.
conservation area.
They're completely out of character.
Yeah,
They
so
look
there must,
absolutely
I would have
appalling.
thought there must have been something there. I don't call it lumen, what we call lumen. That they're too strong. I mean, I go to Durham, and Durham's absolutely beautiful.
Yes.
It's got all low level, low lighting.
Yes,
But I mean, they're completely out of character for the conservation area.
yes, they are. They are. I mean, it's shocking actually that this cannot be resolved apparently, and that residents are expected to pay for it. But I mean, it's not a very helpful response, really. Okay, well, I'll write to John Hennessy and say this is what and how do we want to proceed. Item 13, the donkey paddock, received a verbal proposal from Councillor Heaven to use part of the £2,000 allocated for the donkey paddock to subcontract an initial clearing and strimming. Perhaps you could explain, Councillor Heaven, because the donkey paddock is now not going to be used, is that right, for storing materials?
Yes, councillors will know that there was some controversy over the fact that the donkey paddock belonging to Sandwich Town Council was regarded as suitable for management or work by volunteers from Sandwich Environmental Conservation Group, and £2,000 per annum, is it? Or £2,000 was allocated for that work. That was then stymied by the work on the Guildhall because we were told repeatedly, no, you can't get on to the donkey paddock because the contractors for the Guildhall work are almost bound to want it to store vehicles and materials. So in effect, the SECG put it on the back burner. Volunteers have been involved in other work, including along the rope walk. And suddenly, out of the blue, we suddenly discover that we can now get access to it. Now, what we would like to propose is that, and it's difficult to know who decides this, presumably Sandwich Town Council, should decide that part of the £2,000 for this year should be used to employ a contractor to strim and clear the donkey paddock as it is, and then the volunteers can get stuck in. So we're not asking for extra money, we're simply asking for use of existing funds, albeit for this one purpose.
I don't think the town council has actually drawn up a lease agreement yet with the Environment Action Group. They said you can use it,
Yeah.
but there has to be something actually written down, doesn't it?
I don't know.
And they might charge you £2,000 for the.
No,
There better be. You've got, there will be something written down and what you can do and what you can't do. But it's like that stream runs along the side there as well, doesn't it? That drain, another drain thing. And because also it's shared with the rail track people, isn't it? The gate. So they've got room for 3 vans. I think they can go on that bit there. So that hard standing has to stay there.
Yeah.
But the rest of it, just sort of tidying up, really, doesn't it?
Yes. In preparation to actually work on it.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Sampson.
Excuse me.
20 or 50 year lease or
Well, so proposal on the table then to try and make this happen, pending maybe lease, double checking that we have, if it needs to be done at all, we go ahead with this. Maybe we need it. I presume it have to be full council. I don't know.
Yeah, I think.
let's go full council.
But would it be useful for this committee to recommend that?
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe to help things out, maybe speak to Steve Weatherall, Kestrel's Fen, who cuts the grass on Cowley's Meadow to do the strimming, because he's already got a contract with STC to do the grass cutting for Cowley's. You can speak to him about trimming it down for that.
Yeah. Include that proposal.
Would we have to do it? Oh, sorry.
Councillor Wells.
Yeah, the gazing salts, we've turned Gallows Field into a wildflower meadow. Pete Finley, who's the conservation officer, designed it. We've got harvest mice there, we've got slow worms, so maybe he can come in and act as a volunteer advisor
Yeah, that sounds great. So the we have a motion proposed by Councillor Sampson that we recommend to the council that the £2,000 currently allocated for the donkey paddock is used to subcontract for initial clearing and strimming.
Yeah,
And is that seconded by?
Well, perhaps a formal list drawn up as well.
Can I just have a seconder?
Well, I was going to make an amendment, that was all.
Sorry?
I was going to say amendment that it gets a list.
Oh, what's an amendment?
Well,
to amend my proposal.
amend his
Yes,
proposal.
okay, so what is your amendment?
The Sandwich Environment would actually get a lease with Sandwich Town Council for the use of it, like a 5-year lease or whatever. So because otherwise it's going on, they could do the 10,000, someone else could come along and say, oh, use that a lot, we can clear off. So you do need assurance that you've got it say for 5 years or 10 years, don't you?
Yeah.
Councillor Heaven, do you have a?
Do we need a lease? Because in fact, currently the same group of volunteers are clearing the rose beds along the rope walk, which belong to Dover District Council. Dover District Council's environment officer or whoever was delighted to give us permission and welcomed us. We didn't need a lease from Dover District Council
It's
to
for your
work
own-
on the road.
It's
No.
for your own safety though, isn't it?
Yeah,
If
I
you've
think
got a
what
5-year lease, no one else can come
Yeah.
and stop you. If
What
the
the
council changes next year, it could.
Yeah.
What the concern is that it's, for instance, if you want to do some major changes in there, or minor to major changes in there, you'll have to go to full council for the council to agree it. If you had the lease, if you get the lease drawn up for the area, then it's yours for 5 years and you can do what you wish with it and no one else can touch it for 5 years.
May I suggest a temporary compromise? So we have two proposals on the floor. First one we go ahead with strimming, etc., pending also chatting to I think the one that Colin mentioned and Dean mentioned, so this can go ahead. And the second proposal being, first one, including permission to go ahead and do what you need to currently do. The second one being, let's progress some kind of a lease action, which would probably take a little bit longer to do.
Yeah.
So we do proposals separately and we vote on them.
Okay, two recommendations then. So the first recommendation is that that the council allow the environmental sedge or whatever it's called to subcontract for initial clearing and strimming. And the second recommendation is that the council develop with sedge a lease for an agreed period, say 5 years. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So that's proposed by Councillor Sampson,
I'll second
seconded
that.
by Councillor Marie. Everybody vote. Okay.
Missed my cards.
Right, let's get on. Item 14, the Sandwich Town Council declaration of a climate emergency. How to make this a reality by integrating it into our approach to local STC properties and green areas. And the committee is invited to discuss this issue and make recommendations. My feeling is that we've had a very interesting presentation. We've got a document which we can use. We've been told of some neighbouring local town councils and parish councils that are putting in place various activities, and I think we need to do some more work on that and then discuss it at the next meeting.
I have something to say from a resident that couldn't come this evening. It's something I've talked about before you came, and it's ethical investment of Sandwich Toll Bridge Fund money. It was obviously voted down before, but maybe it can be thought of again now. But the point is that we, as trustees of the Toll Bridge Fund, are still investing in things like BP and Shell. So if we could just include that in something.
I entirely agree with you.
Yeah.
I very strongly agree with you. And again, I think that's an issue which we have to talk about at the Tilbury.
Yes, no, I agree with you, but I just wanted to say under the climate emergency thing.
Yes. Councillor.
Yeah, I agree. This is for discussion at a later date, but I would say that a lot of our work and the approach we take to land we own or land we might own is already informed by the feeling that we should be, for example, planting more trees or
Green
increasing
spaces,
the amount
definitely.
of open green parkland space in the town. The fact that we don't talk about it like that doesn't mean that we aren't motivated by the desire for more open green space.
I think also, I mean, so you can moan about these companies, but you all run cars, don't you? You all buy their products.
Yeah.
You all got gas. You all got gas. You're using electric, which most probably oil powered. So I think that's a bit hypocritical. And also, these companies are invested in green technologies. Everything's moving forward at the moment.
I don't want us to get involved with this, but I just want to point out that it is impossible in the conservation area to put solar panels on.
Yeah, I know.
I have tried
Oh,
and was told there was absolutely no way in which that would be possible. So, you know, reliance on gas has many determinants, and I'm a very reluctant consumer of gas. And there are alternative heat sources which can be communal heat sources, and one of the ideas that I have had for Fellowship Walk, for example, is that it could be a site for a communal heat source for this town, and that's not impossible. So it would be very expensive, but it would be, I think, worth considering. But I don't think you should blame consumers for consuming gas in this town.
You can't. We should go back on pitch.
Get the old coal out again, Jeff.
Councillor Wiles and then Councillor Sampson.
Yeah, I mean, we have already taken some steps on this through the submission to the local plan. So two of the things we put in there one was a fundamental review of traffic in the town and better provision for cyclists and pedestrians, mobility working group, etc. The other thing there that we put in the local plan submission was about carbon neutral, not being just for new build, but also for retrofitting existing buildings. So we have taken steps on the planning side to try and address this issue.
Yeah, so I would agree with some of the things that have been said. We are taking steps. I'm not going to touch on the investing. I think we need to consider that maybe at a little bit more length with the impact it would have to the Holbridge Fund and then the ability we'd have to try and help the town. However, we're also more than just the conservation area in the centre of town in terms of green energy, so there's a lot of areas outside that. And maybe part of our role, so Caroline spoke really well today, part of our role is informing residents about things they can do. So some of the things that they've raised here today, I honestly wasn't aware of half of them, so it's very interesting to know. And I know maybe this is perhaps for under confidential later, but it would be very good to have somebody from Sandwich Environmental Conservation Group co-opted onto the committee. So, because I'm not going to be able to think of half of these things, but I know somebody who has devoted time and research to doing this may be able to inform us more, and then we can inform the town as much as possible. It's a very serious thing. I'd rather not be. Maybe it's a more pressing concern for myself in this room, but I'd.
What do you say?
I'd rather not be underwater for 50 years.
Well, quite. I mean, well, no. I mean, it's not a prediction. I mean, in less than 50 years, by 2050. Councillor Marie, and then I'll...
Yeah, sorry, I can't really say much because I drive a gas guzzling, diesel guzzling coach every day, so I'm pointing out loads of fumes and trying to bring tourism into town, but there we go. I agree with what Councillor Franklin says. We are a heritage town. There's a lot of constraints that we have regarding the stuff that we can do to the buildings, to the land within the town walls, especially. But my personal opinion for the land on the road would be turning it into a forest school for all the local communities and the schools. But that's my opinion. But I agree with what Councillor Sampson. Maybe we can get possibly with item 16. We can discuss it further.
Yes.
I was just going to say, people are talking about what we've already done. It'd be a really good idea to do a scoping of that and detailing everything that we have done, and then looking at what we could maybe work towards.
Yes, that's
I
a
don't
very
know how
good
we
idea.
kind of do that, really.
Yes.
It would be individuals coming in.
Yeah, we just put a more efficient heating system in, haven't we?
Sorry?
We just put a more efficient heating system in, haven't we?
Yes.
I know it's what's it, but I know it is what's it, but we do try.
Yeah. I think it kind of brings people along if there's evidence of what we're actually, that the progress is being made. Maybe it's obviously not enough, but it gives a starting point rather than it's not so overwhelming that, you know, and it gives people the idea that it can be smaller measures.
It's
Like,
important councils, and when they're buying
Yeah,
them,
just low energy light bulbs, you know, we do try a little bit.
yeah. But I think it's important to acknowledge that and share that in terms of looking what you can do beyond it, as well as acknowledging what you do currently.
I think Councillor Tommins is
Thank
completely
you.
correct.
So we will.
Let's make it an agenda up maybe for next meeting.
Sorry?
But perhaps we collate all this stuff in time for next meeting, so we
Yes.
can create even just a poster. So we can even put it in, walk into the Guildhall calls here, here's what we've done.
Yeah.
It would be good to see what the emissions are and the stuff within the town, because basically the local plan is for the district based. It doesn't necessarily give us the stuff of what Sandwich does, what it produces, what carbon emissions it produces over a year and stuff. So maybe we could look into something like that as well.
Yes. I mean, the other big issue for Sandwich residents is those of us who don't have garages and whose houses open straight onto the street. How are we going to buy, use electric cars? And that's a real issue. Anyway, that's something that we can talk about at the next meeting. The Sandwich Delph, item 15, to receive a verbal proposal from Councillor Heaven to fund the publication of a new revised version of Dr. Stephen Fuller's book. Well, he's written 3 books, hasn't he? For STC to fund, sell and benefit from the new book.
Yeah, this is just something that has come up as a result of the Waterways Working Group and the kind of people who can contribute to it. And many of you will have seen Stephen Fuller's books on the Delph and the Delph structures through the town. But he has produced, or he's written, and it's designed, an update which is in the form of one book, roughly that size. But he needs funding to produce it. And what he has proposed is that if Sandwich Town Council, seen as, I suppose we are the most representative body of the people most affected by what happens on the Delph and its history, he would like, and I think it's a good idea, that Sandwich Town Council were to fund the printing of the updated version. Now the costs are quoted as for 200 copies of a book, which I'm assuming if it's that size, would be £2,475. That is £12.30 per book. Now, I don't even know, to be honest, whether funds can be released from the town council's money just like that. But I would say that I found the original books and consulting with Dr. Fuller invaluable in the history of the Delph and what could be done and should be done. And I think, and this relates to some extent to the tourism subcommittee, that it would make a contribution to local residents' knowledge of the town, but also visitors.
Councillor Marie.
Can I just ask, the prices are fine. What will, it says here, what will Sandwich Town Council benefit from it? Will they benefit from the selling of it, and how much will they make from it?
Yeah, what he proposed was to say, okay, it would cost £12 something per book to produce, but we, Sandwich Town Council, would sell it for, any suggestion?
£15.
£15.
So how much, that's not my question, my question is, so if we sell it, how much will the town, obviously the author will take a percentage of the sales, so how much will the town council get from each sale? That's my question. Obviously, so the town council will sell the books on behalf of the author's not going to do it for free, so the author will get...
Oh, he doesn't get anything.
No, he is doing it for free.
So it's just
He
a
is-
production
he is
cost.
doing it.
Right, okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Can I ask, obviously, as we're very eco-conscious now, where is it being printed?
I've no idea. He's got his printer. The printer,
That's what I mean, I don't want to.
the same printers that produced
So
it.
printed in England, definitely.
I-
All right,
Can we move on?
yeah, we'll leave it.
I would like to say something, and it might sound like sour grapes, but some of you know that I wrote a book in 2014, and that which is highly relevant to the history of sandwich, and the RRP was, I think, £18.99 or something, and the museum refused to stock it on the grounds that it was too expensive and nobody would buy it. It was then reprinted as a paperback in 2019, and the RRP, could you not interrupt by passing messages, please?
Not passing messages, just adding up the totals.
Okay. The RRP is, I think it's £8.99 for paperback. And again, I asked if the museum might stock it, and was told it was too expensive and nobody would buy it. And I have to say that I think £15 is quite a lot to us. I don't think there will be that many buyers. So what I'm saying may sound like sour grapes, but and the museum's information as to why they were not stocking my book may have been actually misleading and disingenuous and not true,
Personal,
or personal,
very personal.
but or other reasons which I can think of. So my feeling is that this is not likely to be a success, actually. But anyway, Councillor Wires, Councillor.
Can we move on?
Yes.
This is just speculative. You know, we need a proper report with costings, what it means for us, what it means for the author, etc. We can't make any decision just based on this.
And I was just going to say the
Sorry.
previous books were sold in the Guildhall.
Yeah, I bought one for £10.
Yeah, downstairs
Right.
in the reception.
Okay, and what did they sell out?
Information.
I think so.
Yeah.
Right.
So very quickly, maybe something to be considered for the report. Things can be released online and we can save the paper maybe as well. But otherwise, I really want to buy one.
Yeah, I bought one, so.
I'll sign it.
Okay,
I'll
so
produce
what we
something
are,
else.
yeah, okay, thank you. Right, so now we come to a confidential matter. What? We decided that Councillor Heaven should produce a more informative report on costings and likely consumption. Okay, so
But
this
we've
is
got
now
to vote
We've got
confidential.
to vote on this, haven't we?
Yeah, we have to vote to go into
Yes,
confidential
yes.
first.
Okay, so we are about to discuss co-op teas to the committee, so I think that should be confidential.
A quick question.
To you is confidential.
Are we allowed to make that confidential?
I don't know.
Well, I haven't actually looked. I mean, Artie, you didn't actually mention the piece of the actual section of that section 100 of the Local Government Act, which applies in this particular case. And I didn't actually, because I'm a bit jet lagged and rather exhausted, I didn't look it up myself. So we don't, I mean, it's wrong that we haven't said what it transgresses, but I would really prefer not to have to talk about individuals
In front of
in the public domain. And I would suspect that most of you would also like that to be a discreet matter.
The only thing I'm bringing up is because we've never done this before in terms of going to confidential to discuss potential co-optees. And we're discussing people, and again, the whole transparency side of things, the public right to know. And of course, we're co-opting people because they've got skills relevant. We've got to explain what those skills are, I presume.
I think you should ask the town council whether they're allowed to put co-optees onto this committee, because personally I don't think it's right, this committee should just be councillors.
That is part of
Well,
the
that
terms of reference.
In terms of reference, three
But,
co-optees.
Three
In
co-optees,
terms of
Up to
reference.
3 co-optees, yes.
what, voting co-optees?
No.
No, no non-voting.
But what also concerns me is, we're now February, we've got elections coming up, haven't we? And some of us might not get on, but we might want to be co-optees.
Yeah.
So I think you should wait till after the election yourself.
Yes. We did, actually, it says in the terms of reference that we appoint co-optees
Yeah,
in
okay, but
January.
we'll just say it's wait after the election.
I agree with Councillor Franklin on that, I'm afraid.
Oh, I think
Well,
we've
it
got-
does actually say in the terms of reference that we appoint co-optees in January.
Yeah, but what happens then, if you're on this committee, you put 3 co-optees on, you don't get on the council, then so we've already got our 3 co-optees, so you can't come on, you know?
It's just tough
Tough
really, isn't it?
luck.
Yeah.
Well,
Not you personally.
no,
You're
but
not back on
I
board.
don't know, I don't know, I can't see. I think we should wait till after the election, the next 4 years, then it'll be decided after the election.
Well, we've got a few months left. So I
Yeah,
think we probably
and
should.
it's part of the terms of
Two, isn't
reference.
it? 2 meetings?
2 meetings.
Still worth it.
Yeah, I think it's worth it. We could vote, perhaps.
Yes.
Can I ask a question? Have the co-optees, potential co-optees filled in an application form?
No, the information was asked.
It's
to the
just-
Yes.
council.
I asked Artie, in my absence, to send out an email to all of you, asking you to suggest co-optees.
I did
which is what
respond to
we
that
agreed
email
with
because
last-
I was away in Austria, but I have 2 names in the hat for it. But I will, if we're going to do it confidential, I'll say it then. If not, we say
I
it
mean,
now.
I mean-
if the people are willing to be discussed in public, then I see no reason for
But
it.
we haven't consulted with them at all. So, in fact, as I was walking over, I realised that we would have to use an alternative voting system because there are more than 3 names already in the hat. And I suspect that you would all want to put them in order of preference. And that's a slightly complicated thing to arrange, and it needs ballot papers. I think what I'm suggesting is that we postpone this until our next meeting, which Councillor Franklin, I can tell, will think is even worse than.
I think we should just wait till June.
Well, shall we vote on that, because it would be changing the terms of reference of the committee.
Very quickly.
I would think if we were going to vote on something like that, we'd need actual something standard like an application form, because we'd all have limited information about these individuals.
Well, we'd also need to know if they consent to be co-opted onto the committee.
We're
because no
voting.
idea.
Yeah, we're voting whether or not we're going to co-opt people, aren't we?
No, we're not. We are going to co-opt people. That is part of the terms of reference of this committee, that we have 3 non-voting, up to 3 non-voting co-optees, and I think co-optees would be very useful, frankly.
So do I. So why don't we do it now?
But the question is whether, as Councillor Franklin has proposed, we postpone that until after the election.
Well, the committee will be real.
Christina's got something to say.
Christina can't speak on this. It's council's decision, not members of the public. This is to
Well, it
do
might
with
be
council.
interesting.
I don't
Their
want to
opinion.
say decision. I just wanted to say I'm not sure that a committee can actually change its own terms of reference. Doesn't that have to be full council?
Yeah.
So, why don't we just do it now?
Well, it's very, yes. Okay, Councillor Heaven and then Councillor Sampson.
I think I should have sent myself. It suddenly occurred to me that I shouldn't be here.
But you are here.
Yeah.
You're currently.
So
We have
I'll
to
go
be
ahead.
nice to you.
Because you have been suggested.
Yeah.
Councillor Sampson.
Yeah, so just a quick question. How many individual names did you receive?
I made a note.
Yeah. Don't need names if we're petitioning.
No, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
Oh,
you all need to know who these people
And,
are.
and Councillor Marie has
I have a
suggested
couple
he has
more.
2 more. So,
That's
you
right.
know, so we would have to use an alternative voting system.
You need the information about the people as well, don't you?
And we need to consult with them as to whether they are willing to be co-opted.
So the proposal would be, we'll go back to these people, get the information in time for next meeting,
Yes,
go from there.
So
Yes.
defer it to the next meeting.
yes. Is that acceptable?
It's the way forward. I mean, I prefer we just do it.
alternative, is there?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Councillor Watts?
I mean, the alternative, which is something the planning committee does, is not have individuals but representatives of bodies,
Yes,
such as the chamber or the
yes,
town team or the local history society.
yes. And, but we discussed that, and I think people were minded that we should have a mix, you know, that there are some people who've got obviously a wealth of experience in a particular area relevant to this committee, and others who could represent an organisation. Are you minded to say that this should be postponed until the next meeting, and that meantime I should talk to all the individuals that have been suggested and find out if they're interested in being co-opted? I mean, they may say no, absolutely no way.
I think the committee need the details as well, don't
Yeah.
they?
It's going to
Yeah.
send.
The details of the
The names of the
individuals.
people.
Yes.
And
Yes.
information
Well,
about them, yeah.
there have been, I mean, emails have been exchanged, you should have seen them on the,
No, I haven't.
oh right, well, they're on the STC
Yeah.
iPad.
No,
People,
I think
but
Only a certain amount of names have been mentioned on the
I only know
emails.
about 3.
Yeah.
Oh, and
I have
he put
4.
himself forward.
4 on the
Other,
email.
I think other ones were sent privately, so.
oh, right, okay. And Councillor Marie, you'll send me the 2 suggestions.
I will send you an email with the
Yeah.
2 suggestions on it.
Okay, so are you happy to leave it
Free.
at that I will talk to these individuals, and find out whether they want to be co-opted as individuals or representing an organisation or whatever. Okay? So I think that concludes that item, and item 17,
Please.
We chose you.
the date of the next meeting is March the 13th. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question? The one Keith and I did spoke about smashed down. Because of
Well, I think